We're here to hear from Michael Schneider, who I'm lucky to call a friend and a massive fan of his career, which basically, if any of you are familiar with ESI, um, a kind of very innovative studio within the immersive experience space, like a real leader in that space. Then went to Gensler, DXD, which again was sort of what everyone was looking to as a future of combining architecture and immersive experiences, and now at Volvox Labs, where I have no doubt they're also tapping into the future that none of us on this call can really see yet, because Michael always seems to place himself exactly where the next big push is going to happen. So over to you, and look forward to hearing what you have to share with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Excited to be here. Really awesome to have all of you joining. It's fun to see uh, new people and old friends from all over the world. So let's jump into this. As Matt said, I'm Michael Schneider. I'm CEO and Director of Media Architecture at Volvox Labs. I'm talking about the rhythm of our spaces, augment, enhance, and tune. Before I jump in, a couple of things. This is not my medium. Like, I'm not a screens guy, as you will see as we go through this. So I'd much rather be with each of you in person, and hopefully we can make that happen at some point. I'm going to be talking not about truths, but it's a bunch of thoughts and observations that really have shaped the work that I've done and the work that Volvox does. A lot of things may come across as absolutes, but they're more provocations. Everything's really a mushy middle, and all the boundaries are permeable. But it's good to pull from sides to really tease things out. I a couple things I just like to put out there is like, we've gone through a really interesting 25 years in the rise of digital. And one of the outcomes of that is this whole world of thought leadership. I think a lot of changes are happening right now. We're at the cusp of something new, which is what I'll be talking about. One of those things is I think that maybe and hopefully the era of thought leadership is coming to an end, and we'll move from thought leadership to like doers and action makers. So maybe you'll be seeing less of people like me talking at you. And similarly, I think we've had this kind of fear of failure, and so we've been doing a lot of like modeling instead of doing, because a lot of our choices impact billions of people, but figuring out how we can really do and become doers. And then the last thing I'd say before we jump into this is, this industry and much of the world is still not as diverse as it needs to be. There's a lot of, old white English speaking men that are talking at you, just like today. I look at my team, I look at the upcoming world of people that are doing great things, and I can't wait till they come and change all of that. So that's the setup. We're going to jump in. As I mentioned, I think that we're really at this cusp of a new era of human experience. And I'm seeing two big drivers that I'm going to touch on, and then I'm going to show some work and thoughts and definitions of things that I think are part of what are going to move us to this next place. So the first is this idea that we have really overinvested in screen-based tech. And at this point, the primary engagement that we have with culture is through a screen. And I think it makes total sense. And I think part of what defines that is the idea that technology is our living cultural medium. So let me just break that down a little bit. Actually, if you look at I just did a little talk in Athens at the Onassis Foundation there, awesome group of people. And in doing that, I saw that the core root for the word technology goes back to this, in Old Greek, it's aligned with the idea of art, skill, craft, right? Techno is connected to that idea. And in New Contemporary Greek, it's aligned more with the philosophical concept concerning making or doing. So right baked into the word technology is craft and art. And if you think about it, it's like the cave paintings, it's the technology of the paint, books, music, theater, all these things are about evolving technology. And so it makes total sense that what is at kind of the cusp of technology is what drives our living cultural medium. And there's this span between, folk art to fine art, but it is our medium. Now, the big change that's happened in the last 25 years is that up until this point, most of technology was engaging in the space that we inhabited. The last 25 years has been investing in leaving our physical corporeal space to engage in that technology, right? Like you have to go out through the screen to actually engage in our cultural medium. And so that's where all the investment growth has been focused in. I think maybe a month ago I was walking through LaGuardia, beautiful new airport, lots of fine finishes, good lighting, the materials are great, and 95% of the people are deep in their phones. No awareness at all of the effort that we're put into the space. And it's not their fault at all, right? Like there's the physical space falls flat compared to what you can get out of your phone, and it's where you connect to the world, and we're addicted to it. So I think that's going to change. It has to change, because if we stay screen based, there's really no reason for us to be. So that's one thing that's setting up this change that we're going to see. And then the other is, I think, a real need to belong. And I think that, again, coming out of this last 20, 25 years between technology and mass capitalism, consumerism, like these are the great homogenizers of our world. You can step off anywhere in the world and get a nice Starbucks and go into a place that you feel comfortable with. There is not this real deep sense of like belonging to something that has a strong identity. I think coming out of the pandemic, it's even more exacerbated, a lot of loneliness, a lot of people in isolation. And I think we're seeing a lot of positive indicators, like, festivals. Festivals are gaining huge traction. Sports is like growing massively. Everybody's going to see sports. We're seeing immersive art. We're seeing a lot of great things that are happening. And then we're also seeing a lot of the negatives, like all the anti-immigration policy, exclusionary politics that are really about like, oh my gosh, we need to belong to something. What does it mean to belong? So I think that those are the two, for me, the big drivers of like putting us at this cusp, which of course, selfishly, I believe that we're moving back to the physical world. And I think that this is, I think society, I think technology, and I think business are all kind of aligning to really focus back on the physical space as this like theater of living culture. Right, this is our like corporeal experience, our senses all coming together. It allows us to be different. Every physical space is different. It's like humid and sticky in some places and cold and dry in other places and loud and all those things that make life interesting. And so we can move back into that diversity of physical space. In terms of the things that are happening there, I think there's such an imbalance between what happens in the digital space and physical space that there's this vacuum. And I think that investors and business are seeing that as a huge opportunity. And we're seeing, big bank analysts saying, invest in physical AI and robotics and sensing. Like it's no longer easy money of investing in startups. It's like take a risk, big infrastructural moves, like invent, build new physical things, is a shift in advice that's happening from the investment world. we're seeing companies, I mean, somewhat even like Matt, your team at Journey is like it's a very physical based group of people that are being, structured in more of a traditional like startup growth environment, which is brand new really in our industry, and we're seeing this happening in a number of areas. So super excited about that. And then I think that AI is a major driver. I think the exciting thing about AI is it's a good intermediary between mushy human beings and strict technology, and I think opens up a lot of opportunities to make this world more dynamic. I think a lot of these ideas were established late 80s, early 90s, Xerox PARC, ubiquitous computing, but tech, society, business weren't really in place to make it real. Um, I think that we're at a place where that stuff is going to start to become real. So super stoked. The one last thing I'd say here is that really it's the people on this call that are in the best position to be the experts in this, right? Like these are people who are in live entertainment and theater and experience in themed entertainment. Like we've been putting technology in space for the senses for many, many years. And we're best positioned to support and guide this integration. And it's kind of on us not to like screw it up and to get in there and make this happen properly. And so we just have to be in the right mindset to be supporting that. So that's the setup. And I'm going to jump into a few little definitions of things. So I want to talk a little bit about what it means to have a living cultural medium. I find myself very fortunate because I grew up in a world where living culture was part of my daily life. Growing up in New York in the 80s and 90s, we had Keith Haring and Basquiat, like creating art in the streets. We had amazing artists that were just engaging in architecture and making it part of their canvas. You had raves and parties. You had big installation art just happening in abandoned churches and warehouses. And at the real basic, you had a canvas everywhere you went, right? Like everybody, this was open to all to engage, whether you appreciate it or not. It definitely set the tone that the world around you was there to be part of an act of creation and a cultural medium that was was accessible, and it let you be both observer and performer and creator. So streets were covered with graffitis in the 80s and 90s. Nowadays, this is our living culture. So the same streets are now have a new way for us to engage. And I think it's a totally valid way. You think about the traditional, patrons of the arts. You had the Medicis and you had the church, and there are people that had stories to tell that they wanted people to engage in, and so they invested in culture to be able to tell those stories, to tell their lore, and to drive that forward. So this is today's. So if you want to participate in today's living culture, you either go through your phone, or if you want to do it in real space, you stand in line for a sneaker drop. Both are valid. Both have a lot to be improved. But because of that, at Volvox, we love it. Like that's the medium we want to be working in. So we do a lot of work with big brands as a way to push the craft forward, as a way to really be able to engage people in the lore. So that's a little bit about living culture.
Michael, can you just like talk a little bit about just what we're seeing here, this project?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a project that Prada came to us for Fashion Week in New York. They had a new fragrance that they were going to release, and they wanted to come up with a new way to deliver fragrance. So we developed it's a soap bubble filled with fog and the fragrance. You reached in and the bubble popped over your wrist and left the scent of their new Prada fragrance across your hand. So a really fun project. It was great for our team, and the client loved it. So, yeah. All right. So I just want to set like this so that there's a baseline of what is traditional medium. Traditional media is what you're looking at right now. It's the screen that you're seeing me on and this presentation. It's your phone. It's a thing that has really deep existing tools and expertise. There's trillions of dollars of content. There's standards. There's best practices. And maybe most importantly, there's a really clear business model. Like there's contracts, liability, IP, all that stuff's established. And actually, the most important is when you work in this medium, you are working in the medium, right? Like you're looking at a screen to develop content for a screen. So it's like, an oil painter working in oil. If you turn the screen 90 degrees, it's portrait, like 90% of what I just said just vanishes. Like even just turning it 90 degrees. When you move into new media, all that stuff goes away. And so you really have to rethink how you work in this new medium. And so, we have a whole new media creation process. I'll talk a little bit about it, but, and I do want to say, like, I'm not doing this at all as a plug for Volvox. I'm doing this because I think this is the right way to do work. And I want all of us and all of you to be doing this. So that's my big goal. So it's how do you not abstract yourself from the medium, right? Like you can sit in front of a screen to design for a screen. It doesn't make a sense to sit in front of a screen to design for an experience of space. And yet 99% of the people in the industry, that's exactly what they do all day, which is why I'm at Volvox, because our team's out there building. I'm sitting in our sound studio. We've got a scent lab. We've got physical computing. We do it all right here, and we're iterating super rapidly. I think our industry, I think the world does a terrible job at differentiating between traditional existing media and new media, right? Like if you're doing traditional media, you're learning how to play a violin. And if you're doing new media, you've got to invent a violin and you got to also learn how to become a virtuoso. And they're just like two totally different things. And I think there needs to be a real understanding of the difference of the process and effort put into those different exercises. And then the last little thing I want to throw out there, and there's probably an academic out there that has like real words for this, and I'll find it at some point. If you know, please let me know. But I'm for now calling this differentiating between the idea of a media of place and a media of mind. The simplest way to think about it is like, do you move your eyeballs to engage with it? Or are your eyeballs being moved? Are you bypassing your eyeballs and going right into your optic nerve? So a book or a TV show or a film or a video game or a web experience, you don't move your eyeballs, right? Like that's what the camera motion is for, is to simulate like moved eyeball and experience, where media of place is about you exploring and you being in a position of control and experience, not just with your eyes and all the senses. So theater, dance, music, lighting, circus, dining, graffiti, like these are things that you're really invited to explore in a deeper way. Again, both really important, but a differentiation that rarely happens. And most of us are experts in traditional media and media of mind. And we do really beautiful video that is all about moving people's eyeballs for them. And then we put that on a giant wall. And it's horrible to stand next to a giant wall that has big camera motion, right? So, all right. So I will talk briefly about Volvox, a couple projects, and then we'll open for questions. So Volvox Labs, we're a new media art studio. We are driven by nature, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but nature and natural patterns are key to how we approach our work. As you've seen, space is our canvas. So everything we do is thinking about the augmentation, enhancing, tuning, extension of physical space. It's about being more present or going on a shared journey. And then we integrate all the senses. We really, it's really about invitation and a clear invitation to engage, and using all the senses does that much better. We've got some cool origins. I think, you saw mine. I grew up in the living culture of New York in the 80s and 90s. Camille, the founder and creative director, grew up on the streets of Poland, as a graffiti artist, making graffiti that kind of looked like this, the eighth wonder of the world of Volvox. You can look it up, but it represents who we are and what we do, and also looked like Camille's graffiti tag. He went from graffiti artist into electronic music festivals, and Camille and a lot of our team actually come from the electronic music festival space. It makes a lot of sense if you think about it. This is a place where rhythm, patterns, connecting rhythms and patterns between multiple senses is really key to making it successful. It's a deeply community-driven experience. It's a place where people in the location can move between creator and spectator. It's only recently that the DJ actually sits on stage, right? Like that's a relatively recent thing, or up until then, it was really about the participants being able to move between different states of existing, non-standard displays, and clearly deeply multisensory. We're 16 full-time artists and artisans. We come to the studio every day. And a lot of it is the idea of using our work to better understand the world around us, right? Like I think for most of us, and maybe our team is more on the spectrum than others, but like the world doesn't make sense as it is and needs some tuning. And we use our work as a way to tune and better understand the rhythms and patterns in the spaces that we inhabit, right? And I watch our team, and they get into the flow, and it is a grounding and positive experience for them and for everybody involved, right? So that's a real big driver, and they're awesome. And you should come visit us in Greenpoint. We have a good time. And then our methodology for how do we get into the medium really quickly: observe, tinker, construct, adapt. This is our process. It's not the traditional architectural process. It can be overlaid with it if someone forces us to, but it is the process that really helps us create good work. Observation is really about understanding patterns, rhythms, relationships in space. We do a lot of time lapse and documentation of spaces to kind of understand the existing rhythms and patterns, and figure out how we might want to tune, add things, remove things. Tinker is the biggest part of our process. We have this amazing team who almost any experience, they can create a functioning proof of concept in like 2 to 7 days, including like fabrication, software, sound, content. Like it can be something that you can go and touch and understand. 80% of the way there. And we get to see all the failures really quick and early and keep iterating. And then construct is key. You know, I'd say 98% of what we do here, we do in-house. So our teams do the fabrication, the install, the engineering, sound, lights, you name it, because we're creating in a new medium. And so we need to develop those things as an integrated solution. And then everything is designed with a thought of adaptation or continual use and evolution. We can do that because we have a tool set that is designed for ongoing tuning and evolution of the work that we do from the very beginning of the proof of concept through its ongoing existence. So you'll see these words a lot in our work, but you know, a lot of procedural, parametric, real time. This is about creating frameworks that can keep evolving, so that they can evolve through the design and build process, but also once they're on site, they can get tuned to match the rhythms of the site. I've mentioned nature a bunch. We go back to nature quite a bit as a grounding structure for our work. It really is about the idea of those rhythms, patterns, and relationships. And nature is something that holds up in real space. It works. So it's a great basis to use as a framework. As such, we talk about creating these biomes for people in space. Each of our creations is usually composed of like a biota. It's a fauna, flora, or funga. You get a bunch of them together and you get a habitat, and maybe you have a couple habitats that can cohabitate into a biome. And so each of our projects is approached in that way. As an example, this little kinetic mirror is one little baby biota. You put it into this arrangement, you give it behaviors, relationships, and it becomes a habitat. And then you create 3 unique habitats to create a biome. And this is an example of a haptic habitat, a sound habitat, and a sight habitat working together as a biome. So that's how we do our work. I'll show you like 2 or 3 projects, and then we can open for some questions. So this first one, I was actually on the Gensler side when we worked on this project together. This is a 150-foot kinetic ceiling sculpture in an office building here in New York City. It's made out of lights, kinetic panels, and responds to people's movement through the space. It has lots of different rhythms that can be tuned. So it can be really calm and wave-like. It can be kind of hyper-aggressive and pointy, and you can kind of choose the mood, and it will respond accordingly. You can see some nice shots of it here. And then you can see it in the process of building. So all of this was prototyped in our studio here. We worked really closely with Gensler and that team, as well as the client, with lots of site visits, looking at prototypes. But actually the thing that I want to call out is this upper left picture here. So like within maybe a week or 2 of engaging in this project, we had 3 laser cut paper versions of it in 3 different sizes. We went to site, we flew it at the location, and then we could work with the client, with the architect, to really understand what's the right size, what's the right location, what are the viewing angles. And these are things that like renderings just don't tell you accurately. So again, it's how do you get real as quickly as possible, get off the computer, get out of the rendering, and really move into the real space.
Michael, there was a question about the material, the strut, and I can see you've tried some different things, that strutting or T-channel, or what did you end up landing on for the main structure?
So it's a steel frame. I think the cool thing is each of the different joints is actually a unique joint and was 3D printed. And we have a 3D printing process that's designed. We worked with a 3D printer that has stuff that's designed to last forever. And then the linear actuators here are actually, they're designed and manufactured in Long Island to be up in spaceships and satellites. So they're not cheap, but if you're going to do a kinetic sculpture that is going to be permanent, you don't want to go cheap. So yeah, we did steel framework, and then we had this acrylic to catch the illumination and to be the moving panels.
Yeah.
I'm going to show one content example. I think that is a good example of tuning a space. So this is for a Microsoft VIP kind of business to business space in Los Angeles. We helped design these two big LED screens and then all the content that goes on them. You'll notice there's no camera motion. We build like beautiful scenes and then have all of the activity happening within those scenes. We have some different tool sets. We tend to, use Houdini a lot as our visual output because it holds up at scale, where a lot of the traditional tools of our industry are really designed for small screens and lots of camera motion, where if your blade of grass and its shadow don't stay perfectly in sync, you don't notice it. But on a 30-foot screen, you do. And in this case, the client has the ability to choose if their space is deep and dark or whether it is bright and quick. And there's a whole audioscape that goes with each of these. And so this actually relatively small and constrained physical space now gets to really transform based on the programming that's happening in the space. So that's a fun example of a digital augmentation of physical space. This is a similar project, so I won't go deeply into it. Look on our website, but this was for actually a private residence out in the Hamptons. All these biota were inspired by things that we found in the environment. We went out and spent some time out there on the beach, looking at all the different animals and things that were, and nature there. And then we built a whole series of content that were all inspired, like biota and habitat, inspired by the creatures and things that we found in the direct vicinity of this location. And then this piece is a piece of work. We're doing a series that are just kind of our pure explorations that are really about the interaction of robotics and humans and the digital space. This is the first. We're going to do another one up in Montreal. There's an off Montreal happening at the beginning of next month that we're going to install. And this is really, we love working with robots. We love kind of the provocation and that like fluidity between the digital and the physical space. And so this is really for our team to kind of push on what those relationships really are all about and what it feels like to work between them. And then I'll end on another, Prada. So living cultural medium. This is a piece that we did for a mascara launch in Beverly Hills, where we created these two industrial arms, robotic arms, about 25 feet apart from each other, one on the ceiling, one on the floor, just slowly twisting this elastic nylon rope in this really impressive space, giving hints of lashes, of lines, talking about nylon. They wanted to just be able to talk about the unique character of the brush that they had had a special way of nylon being integrated into it. But none of that was said. It was just, alluded to, but it created this statement that really was the root of this overall experience. So I think a really fun and inspiring projects. So I'm going to stop there. All of our work's on our website. Check it out if you want, but I'd rather dig into, thinking about how we make the world we live in better.
Thank you so much, Michael. It was like amazing body of work and approach. So everyone drop in the questions. I'm going to ask a couple, but in the meantime, please drop them in. We'll try to get to all of them. I guess the first one, like you came from one of the largest architecture practices in the world, and now you work at maybe one of the one of the smallest, and the work is very, very innovative. Do you think it's hard to innovate at scale? I mean, maybe this points to where you think things are going, or where some of the pain points are to be as innovative as you're being now within a large organization, especially when it comes to mixing digital and physical spaces, the little nascent sort of areas where there aren't established principles.
Yeah. I was actually, I was having a conversation with two runners, two leaders of a company that's about 20 people. We were talking a little bit about this yesterday, and I said, um, you can think a lot about a company as like a band, but if if you're a rock and roll band, like if you're an established medium, then you can like hire the best session drummer to come in and like sit in. But if you're actually innovating new sound, you need to practice together every day, and so that you can pivot and explore as a team, right? So I think that the scale thing is really about like what is the effective scale that you can still be practicing on a daily basis together. And I think there are models like I think that probably this like a circus model is an interesting model of getting bigger than you know 15 people and still being able to practice every day and be a relatively well-oiled cultural group. But I think the current big corporate models make that really hard. And then I think the other side of that is really just the risk inherent in the work that we do. And there is a there's a limit to how much risk a big corporation realistically can take on. I mean, that's just the reality of these organizations. So, yeah.
I'm gonna like look into circus business model structures and see if we can apply them. I know we're on a Zoom call, so we can't really explore audio, but I know audio is a big part of the work, and maybe just speaking a little bit about how you think about the sonics inside of a experience, inside of a place.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, I think it's about rhythm is for us, and audio is clearly where rhythm is at the forefront. I often tell my team here, it's like if you've got a really good rhythm, like you can't help but dance. There's like the invitation is built into the medium itself. So audio is core. I'm sitting in our sound lab. One of our OG members, been here for over 10 years. Javier is a Berklee School of Music grad and amazing musician, composer, engineer, artist in general. And so, actually, I just got off the phone with our team doing this massive install in Dallas, giant LED screen. Javier was down there and just put in the audio, and like the whole team was like, "Holy crap, this experience is totally next level now," right? And it's such a, I don't want to say it's simple. It's a ton of work and skill, but it's an insane how often we miss that part of an experience. So we have, part of our business model may be flawed or not, but like we buy the things and put the things in that we think are important, and then we have to figure out how to sell them. So like, we've got this audio room, so I better be putting audio and stuff to make it make sense. And it forces us to really make great work that way.
And we've had a lot of like questions in the chat about, okay, how do I work for you? So maybe talk about the type of like, how do you find the people? I mean, because what you're describing is like a band that has lots of different, I'm sure people have come from every discipline and walk of life and found themselves within your studio. And so to speak a little bit of the process of finding the right, you know, band members.
Sure. Well, I'm a little terrified right now with what's going on, just because, if you look at our team, of the 16 here, including, the founder and all the key founding members, like 15 of our team were foreign students. So,
Right.
like you'll see, and I think you'll probably see that in a lot of the most innovative places in our country. But how do we find people? A lot of us are involved in SVA, NYU, Pratt, the different academic institutions here. We bring on students that we think are a good fit, their intern. So that's a lot. That's, I'd say, 50% of our team is kind of through that process. We hold big events here 3 or 4 times a year. And I mean, our technical director was in a band that performed at one of our events and was, working IT for somewhere, and was starting to learn touch designer, and now is the most fantastic technical director in the world. So the one thing I would say is that almost nobody here is trained in what they do, including like the founding members, our physical design fabrication. She was trained as a graphic designer, and she's like a Rhino grasshopper, CNC milling, whatever you need, bubble maker, you name it, she'll make it work really well. Um, and it's an investment in people. It takes people a year to get up to speed, and then it's great because since they didn't know what they're doing now when they started, then when you ask them to do something new, it's like they can't say, I don't know how to do that. It's like, yeah, you didn't know how to do what you were doing. I hope to start a circus, so maybe you can all join. So that's, in a future state.
Massive
It
recruitment
would be great to have you. Yeah.
Is Evangelos on the line? Um, it was an interesting question about space and how you think of time. You feel free to jump in and ask it yourself if you're still on, but I love the idea of how you think about time within physical experiences.
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Did I get the use? Is that the question? Like, in terms of, I imagine that's even beyond just like visitation, but just thinking about the dimension or element of time within physical installations.
Yeah, actually, from my experience, I'd like to engage in some things, to spend some time to understand them, and the experience gets more powerful for me. So I was interested how you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that is, again, getting us off of our screens and onto the real medium, right? Like we need our team to understand what they're creating as a user, and then time becomes apparent. It's like if you're just looking at a rendering, there's no time that is implied in that rendering. But if you're standing next to a giant LED wall doing something, or a big kinetic sculpture, robotic arm, doing something, then all of a sudden you inherently start to understand the time component of it. So I think that's a big part. And then, I think our focus on rhythm, like rhythm is a time-based experience. So, really, and even when we always have music going here, we talk to all of our motion people, they should put on their favorite track, or Javier will, pull out a really good piece of music, and like listen to that while you're creating your work, so that there is like rhythm at the core, and that I think that really helps drive the time element.
Anne Mullen, you on the line? You had an interesting question.
I am here. I was just curious, Michael. Thank you for this presentation. Super fun. Loved seeing the work. Loved the band analogy, all of it. I was just curious if Volvox could free itself, or if every studio hopes to not just be client dependent work, what would be the Volvox, like, what would your own art be? What would that experience be? What would be the components that, you know, what is the scale of it? What is it?
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah. So I think one of the exciting things about us is I think that our commercial work is a real important part of our identity. Like, I do really believe that like Prada is a patron and is pushing our craft forward. I don't ever want to lose that. Like, that's a key part of what we're doing. I think I would love to shift the accessibility of technology into being more part of the public vernacular. Like, you know, the reason that we're on our phones all the time is because we all have room.
Oh, I think you froze a bit there.
Yeah, you want to back up and say the reason we're all on our phones?
Oh
Oh
no.
no.
No, you're here.
You're back. You're
Oh,
back.
thank you. All right. Sorry.
You
My
froze
bad.
at the reason we're all on our phones.
Thank you. And you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Am I back? Okay, cool. So the reason we're all on our phones is because they're all in our pockets, and we all have one. If we all had an industrial robotic arm sitting in our living room, we would be on our industrial robotic arms, right? So what I would like to see happen and how we grow is by actually putting this technology more into the hands of everybody, right? Like this, that's like, it's like circus meets church meets cultural center, right? Like, you got to go to your neighborhood cultural center to be able to engage in this technology. So that's a future state that I could see us growing to. And I'm sorry the internet is crappy.
I
don't
think
know
you're
why.
back. Kimberly, do you have a question? Have your hand raised?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for the talk. I really enjoyed your projects. Sorry if it's noisy here. But I was just wondering oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Perfect.
okay. I was just wondering what you've thought of in terms of what designers can do to be less reliant on the digital like softwares that we use to kind of like create these concepts that we, you know, bring into reality. I'm a landscape architect, and one of the things that I disliked most about my job was that I spent so little time outside actually, and like actually on the sites that I was designing. And most of the time I was designing landscapes that maybe I had never even been to, like I had never been to that physical space. And that just seemed very, you know, like missing something very important.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to know what you've thought of as ways that as designers we can design less with like computers, maybe. Or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we need spaces that can support that type of rapid iteration. You know, we often start, and people that have worked with me before here know that like blue painter's tape is a great starting point, right? Like, just like tape stuff out, get out of the computer, get into the real world, and understand, like, put yourself as the end user through just, you know, start with blue painter's tape and a projector, you know, so you can start to mimic these things really quite quickly. And you know, field trips, we do a lot of field trips. You know, if we've got a space that we're about to work in, like, go and habit it and really understand that medium. There's certain things where that is absolutely difficult, but there's a lot you can do with a pretty low lift to start getting real early.
Justin, you've got your hand raised. Do you want to come on camera and ask?
Hey, sorry, my apologies. I accidentally hit that button instead of something else. So,
Oh, well, come on. Don't you have a question? Don't you have a burning question you want to ask?
yes, hire me. But no. Um, something off the top of my head here is I am also adjacent to this kind of industry and also trying to figure out, okay, what is a way to kind of work my way a little bit into this. What kinds of things have really stood out to other folks that you've brought onto the team that are more adjacent, don't come from the typical background, that made you say, oh, okay, this is how, like, I want to be able to give this person a chance?
Yeah. I think that we look for a lot of people that are comfortable failing quickly, trying things, taking a risk. I think that it's remarkable how few people actually know how to work in the real world, like use a screwdriver and like carry a large piece of wood through a tight space. So like, and we want our teams to be able to do that. Like they need to be able to function both in the digital world and the physical world. So, I think that there is, and then I think that the demonstrating that you have the ability to a structure that helps you learn something and execute predictably with the framework, and everybody has their different ways of doing that. Like I have one team member that is just he's really amazing at creating like the most core component definitions of any problem. It's like he'll look at it and he'll break it down to like 8 words, and then that like defines the whole thing, and he can apply that to software, he can apply that to building something, whatever the new tool is. Like he's got the framework to learn how to use it and deliver something that's stable. And then I have people that are maybe more deeper on the creative spectrum, that they have a whole process of like just super rapid iteration and failure to get to a really successful place of learning something new. So it's that ability to keep learning and adapting is a big part, and fluidity between physical and digital space, like that's, and comfort with it. Yeah.
Cool.
Like
Thank
you talked about this sort of, it does feel like we're on the cusp of some quite large change. Lots of our conversations, especially in the industry, about the impact of AI and like where things are going, sort of traditional agencies are starting to break up. So we're seeing a technological shift beyond the screen. Like, to your maybe provocation earlier, is how do we not do you have any thoughts on how we don't get left behind as an industry? How the people who are in this space now and they're kind of on the forefront of tinkering and making things, how we don't just kind of like get left in the dust on some next big technological wave.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little Wild West for 3 to 8 years, and it's about being able to take risk and put yourselves out there and meet the right people. I think like OpenAI's $6.5 billion investment in Johnny Ive's startup is a really cool indicator that that the big tech is realizing that they got to crack the world of physical space. So how do we not, I think we can't pigeonhole ourselves in our existing industries too much. Like we got to keep pushing ourselves out there as people that know how to solve these interesting problems. Feel like and then I do think that there's like a business side of it, which I do, as I mentioned, like I think Matt, your team is, approaching things from a more, traditional business perspective that allows it to be. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the whole structure grows in in the world of startups, and whether that has consistency and stability.
I'll
But
let you know in 5 years.
thank you. Yeah. I can't wait to see. 5 years is so exciting. So anyway, yeah. Don't pigeonhole, like don't like push yourself out, go after big, cool things, and understand that what you're doing is not just about like a singular thing, but is really an exploration of how we're establishing a new language of technology and physical space.
Yeah. All right, some more hands raised. Ben, I think you were first up.
Yeah. I think on that same note, what is your favorite failure that you've had? Either at Volvox or like anywhere else personal. And why? Yeah.
Favorite failure. This this is not it's not exactly the answer that you're looking for, but you know, I think like in my role here, where it's really about growing a team, it's been really fun to see team members that work their way through unsuccess to success. You know, like that's a real standard part of I think a successful environment of, you know, where people fail and get to you know, they aren't doing their job the way they need to, and then they learn how to do it in their way, and then they own it. And so I think just this is where I am right now in my career when I'm looking at failures and successes, and that's you know, I think it's something that we all need to understand and respect, that it's like we as parts of a team, like in order to grow, we have to fail. And so how do you, as someone who's growing teams, really take the ownership of that failure and allow the comfort with them to fail, and ultimately knowing that like it's my fault. Like at the end of the day, it's not their fault, it's my fault. So that they can keep learning. So I know that's not what you're looking for, but that's what's at the top of my head right now.
That's also great. That works.
All right, we're on the hour. One more question, Ike. Is that, hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, thank you for this. In terms of moving your work into the public realm, would you engage locative media experiences? And what would that look like for Volvox in terms of placemaking, since your work is very physically based?
Sorry, would we consider what type of experiences?
Locative media experiences? So that could be like media experiences with like AR, spatial computing.
Oh, it's an excellent question. We don't do a lot of that. And it tends to be like we don't do a lot. It tends to be very vision focused, like solely like optical centric, and I think tends to flatten the textures and sounds, and like it's really hard to tune a space if you're just putting these little layers over it. It's not impossible, but I don't know that the medium at the level that we can really, that it can hold up to the weightiness of real space. Maybe say that. I'd be down for it when it gets there. But I think at this point, I think we want to have the gravity of actual physical space. And I've rarely seen, there are examples, but I've rarely seen ones that have that weight. So yeah.
So we're still just around the corner.
Yeah.
As they have been for the last, 10 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for this Future Spaces. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you everyone who showed up on a beautiful August day. I don't know where you are, but in New York, it's amazing. So really appreciate your time, and be sure to join the next one, which is on the 14th of
On the
August.
14th.
All right. Thank you, Grace.
Thanks, everybody. Have
Thank
a
you
great rest
all.
of your
Thanks, Michael.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Matt.
No problem. Thank you. Bye-bye.